If you think the story of human origins is already settled, what you're about to hear will challenge that certainty in a way most people never expect. Because buried inside ancient clay tablets records that have been sitting in silence for thousands of years, there's a narrative so unusual, so specific, and so consistent with modern scientific data that it forces one uncomfortable question. What if history didn't begin the way we were taught at all? In 1947, archaeologists working in the ancient region of Nippur, once a spiritual heartland of Mesopotamian civilization, uncovered something that would quietly alter the direction of historical research. Deep beneath layers of time-worn soil, they found clay tablets that were carefully preserved, yet almost immediately treated with caution. There was no public announcement, no major press coverage, no dramatic unveiling. Instead, the artifacts were quietly transported into museum archives, where they remained largely untouched and inaccessible for decades. For nearly 70 years, they were kept away from broader academic scrutiny, as if their contents carried implications too disruptive for early exposure. When they were finally studied in detail, what emerged from those inscriptions was not simple mythology or symbolic storytelling. The tablets contained precise astronomical charts data, describing planetary positions with a level of accuracy that shouldn't have been possible for an ancient civilization without advanced instruments. The numbers were consistent, structured, and mathematically sound, mapping celestial movements that align closely with modern astronomical calculations. Alongside this data were references to beings who allegedly descended from the sky, interacted directly with early human societies, and played a central role in shaping civilization itself. These beings were not described in vague spiritual terms. The tablets recorded them with unusual specificity, almost like a historical archive rather than religious mythology. Names, roles, interactions, and even structured relationships with early human leadership were documented in a way that resembles bureaucratic record-keeping more than legend. And as researchers began to cross-check the astronomical information, something even more unsettling appeared. Much of the planetary data aligned with what we now know about the solar system, including details that would have been invisible to the naked eye in ancient times. This forced scholars into a difficult position. Either ancient Sumerians possessed astronomical knowledge far beyond what should have been possible for their era, or the information originated from a source external to their natural technological development. Some researchers suggested oral traditions preserved with extraordinary precision over generations. Others argued for lost technological capabilities that have yet to be discovered archaeologically. But neither explanation fully accounts for the consistency and depth of the data. According to the tablets, these sky-associated beings were called the Anunnaki. Linguistically, the name breaks down into elements meaning those who came from the heavens to earth. The text described their arrival tens of thousands of years before recorded civilization, long before organized societies existed in the form we recognize today. They are said to have come from a distant planetary body referred to as Nibiru, described as having an elongated orbit that takes roughly 3,600 Earth years to complete. Modern astronomy has never confirmed the existence of such a planet. But interestingly, there are still theoretical discussions about undiscovered celestial bodies in the outer reaches of the solar system. While nothing definitive has been observed, the possibility remains a subject of debate in certain scientific circles. The tablets, however, describe Nibiru not as hypothetical, but as the original home of these visitors. Their purpose for arriving on Earth, according to the inscriptions, was tied to resources, specifically gold. Early translations suggest it was needed for atmospheric stabilization on their home world, though deeper linguistic interpretations of the original script propose something more complex. In those interpretations, gold is not merely industrial, but biological, tied to processes involving genetic stability, longevity, and life support systems far beyond simple material use. At the center of their civilization was a figure known as Enki, portrayed as a scientific mind deeply involved in genetic experimentation. The tablets describe him not as a mystical deity, but as an engineer of life, someone who studied biological systems and explored how they could be altered, optimized, and repurposed. Under his direction, a plan emerged to solve labor demands faced by the Anunnaki population working in harsh extraction environments on Earth. Those early labor systems eventually became unstable. The tablets describe exhaustion, resistance, and eventual rebellion among the workforce, forcing leadership into crisis. Faced with the breakdown of their existing structure, Enki and other figures proposed an alternative. Instead of relying on their own population, they would create a new species engineered specifically for labor. This marked the beginning of what the texts describe as a multi-stage genetic process. Across 12 distinct phases referred to in some interpretations as codes, a primitive Earth-based hominin was gradually modified. Each stage adjusted specific biological traits. Endurance was increased, independent thinking was restricted, lifespan was altered, and cognitive capacity was fine-tuned to ensure obedience while maintaining functional intelligence for complex tasks. By the final stage, a new species had emerged: humanity. The tablets are surprisingly direct in describing this outcome. Humans were designed with purpose-built traits, the ability to work continuously, reproduce reliably, and maintain structured social organization under guidance. Some translations even reference a natural lifespan limit of around 120 years, though later interpretations suggest this may have been reduced through further modification or environmental adaptation. What makes the narrative even more complex is that these beings did not simply create humans and leave immediately. The texts describe ongoing oversight. Early human societies were structured under a layered system, separating workers, soldiers, and ruling classes. Certain rulers were said to have direct contact with the Anunnaki, receiving instructions and knowledge through designated locations. These locations were the ziggurats, massive step-like structures that modern archaeology has long interpreted as temples. However, the tablets imply they served additional purposes: communication hubs, observational platforms, and control centers where information exchange between human leadership and higher authorities took place. Their precise geometry, astronomical alignments, and engineering complexity continue to raise questions about how they were constructed with the tools available at the time. Then, around 10,800 BCE, something changed dramatically. Geological and climatological evidence points to a major global disruption often associated with the Younger Dryas period, a time of sudden climate shifts, massive flooding, and widespread ecological collapse. Many ancient narratives appear to echo this same moment of upheaval. According to the tablets, this event marked a turning point. The primary group of these sky beings withdrew from Earth. The text suggests their departure was not abrupt chaos, but a structured exit, as if a long-term project had reached completion. Humanity, now established and capable of sustaining itself, no longer required direct oversight. Yet not all of them left. Some accounts describe factions that chose to remain, retreating into hidden or subterranean environments, continuing their influence away from direct observation. This idea of departure and hidden continuation becomes a recurring theme echoed across global mythologies. Across different civilizations, similar patterns appear. Egyptian records describe divine architects who shaped early kingship and monumental construction. Indigenous traditions across the Americas speak of star visitors who taught agriculture and astronomy. Mayan calendrical systems encode astronomical cycles with precision that still impresses modern researchers. Inca engineering demonstrates construction techniques that remain difficult to fully explain even today. In ancient Indian texts, accounts of Vimanas describe aerial craft and advanced technologies descending from the skies. While each culture expresses these ideas differently, the underlying structure of the narrative remains strikingly consistent: knowledge arriving from the sky, rapid advancement of civilization, and eventual withdrawal of those beings. In modern times, this ancient pattern has been reinterpreted through the lens of unidentified aerial phenomena. Governments around the world have declassified reports describing objects moving at extreme speeds, performing maneuvers that defy known physical limits, and appearing in controlled military airspace without clear explanation. Incidents such as the well-known Roswell event have fueled decades of speculation, especially given shifting official explanations over time. Military pilots have reported encounters with objects accelerating instantly, changing direction without inertia, and operating in ways that challenge current engineering understanding. These reports are often treated cautiously, but they continue to accumulate across different nations and time periods. When viewed alongside ancient texts, some interpret these modern accounts as a continuation of the same phenomenon described thousands of years ago. The idea is not simply that history repeats itself, but that it may be part of a longer, ongoing narrative involving observation, intervention, and periodic return. The tablets themselves, as interpreted by some researchers, suggest that certain technological milestones act as markers. The development of genetics, nuclear energy, artificial intelligence, and space exploration are sometimes viewed as indicators of a civilization reaching a threshold of maturity. Over the past century, humanity has crossed many of these thresholds in rapid succession, compressing technological progress into an extremely short period of time compared to the rest of human history. This raises a difficult question embedded within the interpretation of the texts. If there was ever an intention to return, would these milestones signal readiness? No clear answer is given. The inscriptions do not provide closure. Instead, they leave gap spaces that invite interpretation rather than confirmation. And perhaps that is the most unsettling aspect of the entire narrative. It does not end with certainty. It ends with possibility. If these ancient records are to be believed in the way some interpret them, then humanity stands at a unique point in its own story. A civilization that may have origins it does not fully understand, advancing toward capabilities it only recently began to grasp, and potentially approaching a moment of contact that was described long before modern science existed. Whether this is historical record, symbolic mythology, or something in between remains unresolved. But the questions it raises continue to echo across archaeology, astronomy, and modern speculation alike. And ultimately, the most important uncertainty is not what the tablets say about the past, but what they might be implying about what comes next.